is it access or is it transition? This is the most difficult question to answer because it depends on where you are. In some communities, it's actually access. And we just, as Africans, we need to challenge ourselves in the room. Where are we in the transition, especially on the energy side? So, and the question is, if I finance a client to move from cutting trees because it's a school using 100 trees to cook every month, and I finance them to put an LPG facility for cooking, is transition. I'll transition them from cutting trees to another form of but from the taxonomies and climate conversation, am I, where do you classify that? Because we are told that's a fossil fuel. So I think those are some of the questions we need to answer. Transition and access depend on where you are. Unfortunately, we don't have African taxonomies. So we are using the EU taxonomies on these things, and raising funds become difficult if you are using your own defined local taxonomies, like LPG, reticulation, and all that to replace firewood. So it's a difficult conversation. I don't have a correct answer for that, whether it's access or transition.
Thank you, Dr. Evans.
Yeah, I think these guys have responded to almost every other thing, but I'll just put in my bit also on this development finance, climate finance conundrum. Those of us in this room may be converted, or a lot of us in the climate change space are converted, okay? So we keep preaching to each other. But the large majority out there, are not. And those in positions of power, decision-making positions, people who have the final say on where the budget goes and so on, climate change and the health elements into each other's policy frameworks. And this is happening, for example, in Kenya. I'll give you examples whereby we have the National Climate Change Action Plan 3 process. It was launched, but I believe it's still ongoing. Making sure that, for example, health elements have been integrated into that particular document, okay? And at the same time, getting the health community integrate climate change considerations in the health policy of the government. Same as trade or any other document. So we get the climate change response document on one side, and then the other development focused thing like on transport or whatever, also integrate the other. So, and to facilitate that, of course, that's where the civil society elements come in. We have our think tanks that work very strongly in this, and they have demonstrated their abilities in that particular situation. So one role is sensitization, deliberate sensitization by civil society of the groups, just mapping out who needs to hear what and giving them the message. And on the other hand, also working hard to support through technical assistance to mainstream either climate change into that development element as understood by that cluster, and also making sure that that particular cluster's aspects are also mainstreamed into the National Climate Change Action Plan. So if funding goes to the NCCAP, for example, it gets supported from that avenue. If funding, on the other hand, goes to the health policy or whatever, trade or whatever it is, and that is where the money is, the same element that could have been funded this side is also funded through the other side.
Thank you very much. So very quickly, I'm going to run through the questions that are coming from online, and then you will use them Josephine, Eric, and Evans to give your final parting shots. Most of them are appreciative of the information. From Josephine Salah Ayari, she has a concrete proposal calling for the bank to be seen as an agent of change, working in this new vision of working with private sector. And she's calling for a country-specific audit and the information from that audit would be used to galvanize the contribution of each private sector. We have Joseph Luwate, Ebo Saida, Lydia Kimani. They're specifically asking, how do we plug in as civil society? How do we plug in into the triple AP? What criteria does the bank use to support, and so on and so forth? Then we have Patrick Karani from Bear International, who is saying that there is a study that says that there is over 200 trillion climate finance liquidity that has not been tapped into from private sector. And this is mainly because of the barriers, the high upfront costs, the cost overruns, the delays, permits, risk, and so on and so forth, that calling upon the bank, the African Development Bank, to engage with private sector to see how they can address those challenges and remove them. Christopher Ichelenge from DRC is also asking about selection criteria. Specific to LPT, the people online are saying that they know more about the commercial aspects than the very nice operations that you've talked about in the foundation. Maybe because the commercial people know how to promote themselves a lot more. I don't know, but they would really love to hear more about the things that you have said and how they can participate. There are general comments from Dibwe Guy, from Hassan Abdi, and Ndiaye. Many of them are really talking about, can we involve the local communities, mentorships, trainings, microfinance, youth-based approaches in recognition of all the challenges that we suffered and the extra burdens that were brought onto us by the COVID pandemic and all the associated lockdowns. We engage some more and have more innovations to be able to reach and work together. So I'm going to open it up again, still back to Josephine, Eric, and Evans for the closing remarks, also with bearing in mind the comments that have been submitted online. Thank you.
Thank you again, Pauline. I'll be very quick. I think the call to the bank to be an agent of change and for country-specific audits, these are things that, I hope everybody now understands that indeed there is a lot the bank is doing to be this agent of change. There's a lot more, as I said, that I didn't indicate in terms of the initiatives. But of course, the push goes to, for example, the bank's participation at the COP negotiations, the advocacy role of the bank there, the strategies that we are working with, and the catalyzing. This is one example of what we are trying to do to bring everybody on board so that we can have the change that we want. And yes, that is definitely something that I would say we should all be agents of change. Let's not just look at one entity and say, what we say, change begins with us. So we see what we can all bring to the table, and we put it together, and then we see who has a comparative advantage to push something. For example, we always say we have a comparative advantage to get funding into Africa. Why? Because we are AAA rated. We can go to the capital markets, we can raise funding at a reasonably at reasonable prices. We can pass that on, for example, to the banks in Africa. And here in Kenya, in East Africa, we have a lot of lines of credits that we've given or extended to the banks in these countries. And because they benefit from the AAA rating costs, they're able, and we hope they do, pass them on at reasonable cost. And we look to, for example, those institutions where we then advance technical assistance to accompany the lines of credit to really be very active in identifying, for example, what are those climate change related projects that need the technical assistance to make them more bankable. That question always comes up. You talked about the high cost of lending from the banks. So we come with different instruments. We get to a financial institution and we say, here we go. This is money that comes from a AAA rated institution. Not very costly, not as costly as if you go to raise a bond. Please couple it up with technical assistance, work with your clients to advance this specific goal: climate change, gender, youth, jobs. So we want to encourage everybody to take advantage of what's available to also contribute to being, an agent of change. I think I had addressed the question of how do we plug in more generally, but what I would suggest, Zainab, maybe for comprehensiveness, maybe one of the things that could come out of this is to identify and share all the available funding mechanisms that we have in the bank where the CSOs could actually benefit, and then share more information. For example, when are the calls for proposals coming in? What are the eligibility criteria? Because I don't think we'll be able to go through this right now. You could maybe have it as an action coming out of this, and then everybody could see where they could try to tap into these resources. As I said, it's a call for proposals. So it's competitive, but I think the more you know about it, the better you're able to prepare for that. The third question, and I think this was my final one before I conclude, on the liquidity. It is true, the conversation about there's money out there always comes up, and not just for climate change, but I think the real question is how do we make the projects that are tackling climate change bankable? And it's not just bankable for the private sector and commercial banks, it's also for us. The good news is that we, as a bank, and I believe our partners in the private sector, financial institutions, are funding already a lot of projects. We've funded the private sector in renewable energy projects across the continent. We are working with, for example, the Africa Water Facility, another entity that we have to deal with water-related issues. And in fact, the Africa Water Facility, housed in the bank, issued the first ever climate bond in East Africa. And that is an aim to tap into this liquidity that is existing. So we tailor this instrument and we say, we're raising money for climate finance. Our partners who have a passion in this space will come in and hopefully we'll get some reasonable pricing for it. But that is just an example of the initiatives. What we need to do though is blend, and that has come out of this. Let's get a little grant, let's get concession of funding from our climate action window. We have a partnership with Canada that gives concession of funding as well for climate related activities, and bring them together, bring down the cost of funding. And I think then we will see more of the liquidity that's existing begin to be absorbed. As I close, I want to just speak specifically on the engagement with the private sector, give you two examples. One is something we call the Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa. This one specifically works to provide concession of funding to private sector entities that are promoting projects in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And we have successfully combined this concession of funding window with our traditional window to fund some private sector operations on the continent. The technologies for African agricultural transformation, I talked about that earlier. This one is working very closely with private sector actors in the agricultural value chain. For example, the agrovets, seed distributors. So although it's embedded often in a sovereign operation, the actual participants, suppliers, for example, of the seeds that I talked about are the private sector. And that's really another way of making sure that we are having the private sector come in. The more we can support them, the more they can also go out and mobilize funding. Hopefully, as they grow, they can also access more funding from people like Naivasha, Equity Foundation, Equity Bank. And then it grows the pot. So there are different angles, but I want to emphasize the multiplicity of instruments. Guarantees, again, as I said, lines of credits, technical assistance, capacity building for people like yourselves. All of them will be necessary to tackle the entire value chain if we're going to really make the significant difference that we want, not just the small differences, but the major steps that we need to take in this regard. So I think I want to stop there and say that I have found this very, very interesting. I think, Pauline, you started off by explaining what you're doing. Really sounds interesting, a good model, because I think some of this money that's sitting idle somewhere is waiting for people like what you're doing to come and help people access it, right? So we don't want to underestimate the challenge of being able to put together a business plan that, as Mr. Naivasha said, they're not patient. So they want to see something that they can already start running with, or they can at least begin to work with. And hopefully, if we all work together, we will be able to overcome this challenge sooner rather than later. Thank you, everyone, for your very interesting contributions and your attention. Back to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Eric. Now over to you.
Yeah, thanks. I think Josephine has summarized it well. I just want to pick up from where we are saying there is too much money chasing very few eligible climate projects. And that has been the case even for us. You have, a pool of money that you want to invest in climate eligible assets. When you look at all these taxonomies and what is eligible, what's not eligible in terms of climate action, then you find very few projects. But then when we started combining that with the TA, coming even with business plans for small businesses that want to green their businesses, risk sharings, ecosystem approach that I discussed, then we are seeing a quick uptick of that money and growing quite rapidly, even with over 100% now in terms of uptick of eligible climate assets. So I just wanted to start with that and also say that we're now becoming more patient. And that's why we started the twin engine model, so that then we have the foundation that is going out there to capacitate farmers, to develop business plans for them, to train small businesses and all that. But the point I really want also to add is on the involvement of the youth, engagement of the youth in climate action. Because I think that's very important. And through the program that we're implementing with the MasterCard Foundation on Young Africa Works, we have deliberately included climate action in that program, so that now we are actually beginning to measure the green jobs created for youth businesses, because I think the youth really need to lead the action, much more energetic than ourselves. And the last one is the use of technology. Our sixth pillar in our recovery and resilience plan for Africa is on technology-enabled ecosystems. And we have taken a view that technology will leapfrog a lot of things that we are suffering with from a data perspective, because technology will give you data from which you can base even lending decisions or programming decisions. So enabling digital ecosystems that allows us to get data and working with the youth. I think there was a question also that we didn't answer on the youth involvement. And this way we even running hackathons for youth to come with creative ideas on the technology side including how to grow trees using technology and measuring the amount of carbon sequestered from the app. And the youth are coming with these ideas so that then our forestation program will be able to monitor growth of trees from a digital platform. Is something that we need to continue investing and thinking about. So thank you very much for having us on this very important forum, and we look forward to continue engaging in these discussions.
Thank you. Dr. Evans, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just to come in quickly on where Eric has left, like he has said, there is too much money chasing few projects. The reason being, like what I said earlier, we have not demonstrated to those with the money that we are worth funding. Okay. So people will say you can obviously see all this drought, animals are dying. So what more do you want us to tell you in order for you to support? Okay. Yet, I mean, he who calls what do you say?
The pipe is the pipe
Positive.
Exactly. So I want to believe that that is the beginning point. Let us document the little projects that are happening. So many little successes scattered all over. If we can be able to aggregate all this and find a formula of engaging the private sector and de-risking some of those, then I think that's one way to go. Secondly, we need to invest quite a bit in enhancing the technical capacity of the CSOs to engage with the industry, particularly on matters climate finance. This is a rather complicated subject to a lot of the private sector people who just want to do their business, and NGOs also, you know, CBOs, civil society organizations in general, whereas they would really like to be involved in this, their capacities are limited in terms of the subject matter, the technical element. So if we can invest in enhancing the capacities, technical capacities of the civil society to engage with the industry, then that would be fine. So the question is again, who takes the lead here? Then the other one is, can we communicate more the success stories that we have? Of course, we've had the big brothers like Equity, maybe Safaricom and others communicate the sustainability reports and so on. But what about the other smaller private sector actors who are doing so much? Like I know some dairy farms somewhere in Nakuru and in Nyeri who are also doing quite a bit in terms of environmental conservation that has climate benefits, but no one knows them, okay? They don't really want to blow the trumpet, but they have case studies that others can actually learn from. So how can we make sure that some of those good cases from the private sector are out there, so the civil society can actually play this kind of a role? But then somebody needs to fund them to be able to go out there, document that story, and then put it out in the right audiences or congregations. Then finally is the question of accountability. The climate finance theme is quite dynamic, and I think just like the climate space itself. And as we go towards the COP28, we are all asking ourselves, okay, the global stocktake, what will happen thereafter in our sector or in that other sector? The global goal on adaptation, what do we expect to be the final decisions there? The loss and damage, when this fund and the institutions are finally out there, how shall we metamorphose to tap into the opportunities that may come with those kind of decisions? So we need to remain alert as civil society and identify opportunities that can help bridge this gap between what civil society knows and what the private sector needs to know, so that we can tap into these resources that the private sector is carrying on its head, wondering where to put in as far as climate action is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Josephine, Eric, Evans, and all the contributors. We are in this together. Good to end on the knowing that there is too much money following too little eligible projects. We all agree that adaptation, development issue is our priority versus the mitigation, but mitigation presents the opportunities that we could tap into. We've talked about de-risking, like blending, concessions, capacity building, technology, with the best practices, the models that are out there, how do we scale them up, how do we amplify them, but also what is our value proposition to the people that we would like to benefit. We have understood, we have our models, we have written everything in our language, but somehow we are not in tandem with the real grassroots that we would like to benefit. So how do we present our value proposition to them so that they can buy? We can't cry louder than the bereaved. We are in this together and we need all hands on deck. Much as I would have loved to continue with this tango, I give it back to,
Yes, I want to steal your thunder, Madam Chair.
It's
they
not a
say,
tango.
they say if you are the organizers, you should be in listening mode.
Yes.
My name is Basil Jones. I'm with the Gender, Women and Civil Society Department. I'm the lead program and policy coordinator. And I just want to pitch in from the discussions, the rich discussions we've had so far, and thanks to all the panelists, especially my colleague here, Evans. We got together at IDRC before. Nice to see you again, Evans. Tomorrow we're going to have a discussion on the bank's civil society action plan. And it just got me thinking, such rich ideas that are being shared on this very important topic on climate change and green growth. And I can also throw in fragility. The action plan that the bank is going to develop will be the first civil society action plan. And it has been consultative, but we also want to enrich the document, and we want to hear from our partners, people that are on the ground on basically the value proposition, what it is that you can help us with, we can put in the action plan, and based on that action plan, that is how we're going to develop the work program for the next 4 or 5 years for the bank's civil society engagement. So I just wanted to pitch in to say that, let's get all these ideas. I'm sure there's going to be a questionnaire that will be shared. Yeah. And if you can give us all those good ideas that can help our consultant that is developing the action plan to harvest these ideas that we are generating at this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Back to you, Luther.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pauline. Yeah. Yeah, Zainab is doing things up. So the tango was run smoothly and very efficiently. Thank you very much, and congratulations as well to your amazing line of speakers. We have taken good note on the potential and the available fundings, and I've seen that at the end of the session, you have seen that Dr. Evans said, "My partner," which means that the partnership is now built up. Yeah, and they will come to you, and Pauline from the coalition will also be in the position of monitoring and following up. So thank you very much for an enriching session. We are running out of time, but we are still okay. I would just like to remind everyone that the session is on live, on social media, live stream, and the Zoom link, of course. We so far have a cumulative audience of more than 100 participants. This is for the Zoom, but we have others on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. But for now, on Zoom, we have more than 100. And participants are actually from East African countries, mainly Kenya, of course. We have Burundi, we have Rwanda, we have Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda, of course, because of Pauline. So more statistics to come. We also have participants from the diaspora and from the headquarters of the bank in Abidjan. Next session is also an exciting one. It's about accountability. I will not comment. We'll have our moderator, Maurice Odiambo, from EXOF National Chapter. Well, okay.
Yeah.
And the moderator will introduce Zeynep for a brief keynote.
Now you're doing my job.
And then, and then you'll have discussion. So, Maurice, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Just to first appreciate the past sessions, very enriching discussions. I come in with a number of disadvantages. One of them is time, and the other one is we are approaching lunch. So I think I should put that up front. So this is the accountability session. So this session is looking back to GoForward. Basically, what we'll be doing then is to say what kind of commitments have been made in the past by the bank and also by civil society, and how far have we gone? What are the lessons that we have learned, and so on and so forth. Because these are the lessons then that should take us forward. So that I don't take up too much time with the introduction, we'll have remarks from Zeynep, who is the manager, Civil Society and Community Engagement Division. And we will also have additional remarks by Chikane Zeiko, Civil Society Engagement Expert. And then our discussants for this session will be Masheti Masinjila, who is my colleague, who is representing us on the committee, and Mutai Winnie, who is the climate change expert. I think without much ado, because of the disadvantages listed, I will go straight away to Zeynep. Please take up the floor.
Thank you, Maurice, for introducing me. And greetings, all those who are joining us online since the morning. As I said earlier today, the quality of our collaboration with CESOs depends also on how accountable the bank is to the people itself. This is very important. This session is important for the bank because it is an opportunity to be transparent on what you are doing in terms of engagement, and also it is an opportunity to keep on strengthening our collaboration with CSOs. During the first regional forums, we started regional forums in 2021, and then for East Africa CSO forums, we agreed on a series of commitments. I want to mention 3 of them. One is CSO were to be increasingly included in the preparation of the country strategic paper. Country strategic paper is the framework document between the bank and the country, where the bank is engaging country in development activities. The second commitment, CSO Open Day were to be organized to better inform CSOs about the bank's operation in the regional member countries. And the third one is capacity building sessions for CSOs to be organized on the bank's initiatives, mainly AFAWA, Jobs for Youth, and other initiatives on the bank, in the bank. Now, this accountability session is meant to present all action taken to implement this commitment, to celebrate our success, but also to identify areas of improvement. And to help for this exercise, as mentioned by Maurice, I'm glad to be here today with, again, Masheti, and my teammate, Chika, who is the civil society officer from the East Africa region, and Winnie, our climate change expert. Thank you very much. I think it will be very exciting, and how you will see how civil society are involved, and also how the bank is keeping our commitment, implementing our commitments. Thank you very much.
Okay.
maybe I should just reintroduce myself. My name is Chikane Johannes Ezibu. I'm the civil society engagement expert working with the bank in East Africa. My day-to-day tasks they are targeted at mainstreaming civil society engagement into the bank's policies and operations. That is, strategically integrating the voices, the views of citizens at the grassroots, citizens that our projects that are supposed to benefit from our projects, to ensure that there is inclusive participation, that no one is left behind, there's transparency and accountability. That being said, Zainab mentioned 3 commitments that were made in 2021. And I would like to say that although she mentioned it, I believe that these commitments are ongoing processes. So even though we are reporting it now, it's something that we keep doing till, it's all covered. In 2021, we had the Engaging Civil Society in Building Resilient Economies in Post-COVID-19 in the 5 regions in Africa. We had the forums in 5 regions. And for East Africa, I'll mention the commitment and I'll see what the task, the activities were. The first commitment was for the bank to involve civil society in its operations to promote and strengthen accountability and transparency in regional member countries. Now, civil society organizations were involved in project preparations, consultations in the region. We involved civil society in 16 project consultations from January 2022 to date. Now, I'm reporting January 2022 because the forum was in November. And so that's the first one. We had a lot of consultations. And of course, I worked with Machete in, in mobilizing these civil society organizations. Thank you very much. Then, the second commitment was for the African Development Bank CSO representative and the bank to work together as part of regional preparations for the 2022 Global CSOs Forum, which was held last year. We worked together, and for me to say that not just in mobilizing CSOs that participated online, but we had CSOs coming to share their experience. Of course, Pauline was there last year and she's from Uganda. So she came in, she shared her experience. We also had a CSO from Ethiopia. So we had CSOs, the bank CSO committee member participate actively in organizing the regional forum. So that's that with that commitment. And of course, this CS forum, they've been actively involved both at the task force level, both at mobilizing civil society to participate, even to mobilize, help us identify speakers. We didn't do it alone, we did it with the help of civil society organizations. Thank you, Machete. Then we have CSOs to be increasingly included in the preparation of country strategy papers in the region. We have CSOs participated in 11 CSP processes from 2021 to date, plus the regional integration strategy paper 2023 to 2027. We had civil society organization come in during the consultations, made their inputs, it was captured in the document, they reviewed the document, it was captured in the document. So it's not just about them participating, they also help to mobilize CSOs for consultations, participating actively during these consultations. And one of the things that they also help in doing is that, so for the strategy papers, there are always key pillars. There are sectors that are involved, like you have CSPs that the pillar may be on energy, on agriculture. We have the CSOs help us identify even community-based organizations that contribute during these consultations. Then we have the fourth commitment. Civil society open days to be organized in 2022 and 2023 to better inform civil society about bank operations in regional member countries. And in 2022, we didn't have we didn't have any open days, but in 2023, we had 2 open days organized in Seychelles and in Rwanda, partly because of a lot of conflicting priorities and some challenges with regards to resources internally. We have the last commitment, capacity building sessions for CSOs to be organized for on AFAWA initiatives, Job for Youth, just like Zainab had mentioned. This particular commitment is just beginning as we are working with the AFAWA team to currently map women entrepreneurs in East Africa. So like this is the first step of the capacity building program. And once that is done, by next year, hopefully, we'll keep kicking into the proper commitment. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Chikane, for taking us through the commitments. Again, I think I'll just go straight to Machete. So Machete, you're the first discussant, then we go to Winnie. Please just take it up.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I agree fully with what has been said before about the commitments that in terms of just like going through each one, they have been met in like being fulfilled. What I'll talk about briefly is what we have learned from kind of the working with, now from the CSO position at Africa Development Bank in getting this commitment through, and then also very briefly from the demand side, but these are much more from the supply side, part of the service now to CSOs. So the first big lesson from the region is what I talked about before, about the nature of civil societies within the region, how they operate, and their capacities or lack of it to be able to engage. And I mentioned the lack of it prominently because there's a lot of that in terms of, for instance, when it comes to placing the different civil societies in different dockets where they're supposed to contribute. We spent quite some time doing searches and all that. The other thing is that there's the famous Nigerian writer, Wole Soyinka, who had this thing that they call Abiku complex, where you have an organization existing today and you know it 3 years before. When you call on them in 2023, they cease to exist. So suddenly you have a gap. So there is a gap in terms of capacity of civil societies to be able to keep up with what they are doing and to find them, when you need them, and to be able to make themselves present. The second thing, for this to happen, it has to happen within the whole ecosystem of relationships between governments, meaning the national governments of the respective governments within the region, and the different kinds of departments within government. So not because of any here. The government department that we are always sure of catching is them, the Ministry of East African Community and Regional Development, because that's their work, that's their mandate in government. It's a bit hard going now, connecting what we are doing now with the other government departments. So we have to work through them. We have to work